And gentlemen, Ron Harlow here. We got a special guest in the house running for state senator, Charlie Kallas. How are you, Charlie?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very pleased to have you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm Charles Kallas, like you said, running for state senate in the 1st District. But I'm going to skip the introductions and we're going to jump right into why I'm here today.
Absolutely.
Simply, there's an article that just came out and I released a statement on behalf of the Hammond Republican Party regarding my complaint I issued to the Board of Elections and Registrations regarding the Hammond School referendum. So I wanted to jump right on that and why I submitted the complaint.
Thank you.
So, you know, a lot of Hammond residents don't realize we have a problem that's going on. And, you know, they may not realize it, or maybe they're just assimilated to the corruption of Lake County. I mean, we did have a sheriff after all that went to jail. But the problem is, or what you may not be aware of, is that a fraud took place on the Hammond voters and the Hammond residents for using their tax money to advocate for more tax money being spent. So to summarize it, and whether you were for or against the referendum, there's information that has come to light that needs your attention and needs to be acted upon. So I know you guys had Kevin Smith on earlier, right before I came on, and I hope the election board is listening because this is a serious problem, and I hope the residents of Hammond are listening. So to summarize the complaint, okay, it's come to my attention through various information sources that teachers were using school email resources to campaign. That's a violation. Supervisors and bosses were telling employees how they should vote. Campaign material was being spread in the workplace. Some threats of what may or may not happen to certain programs, teachers, cuts-wise. If the referendum didn't pass, that's somewhat of a violation. School administrators, you know, and I don't want to attack WJOB, but they were on WJOB paid for by the taxpayers, advocating for the referendum, which is a violation of Indiana Code 3-14-1-17. As a state legislative candidate, it's my job to know this type of stuff if things are being violated. So, you know, and then the big one, and this is the reason why I waited last minute, or why I waited till now to file the complaint, was simply because I was waiting on that financial report. Does it all add up? And all expenditures to WJOB were omitted from the financial report. Now, I'm not saying that there was wrongdoing on WJOB. I believe this is a great tool, a great opportunity, and the school city of Hammond should be using this. But if you're going to be advocating for a referendum, you cannot be using taxpayer money at all. So, you know, we must be asking ourselves, this is our education system. I was a product of the Hammond school system, and I was proud to be part of it. But is what it's turning into? You know, should we have the bar that much lower to these people? That they should be exceeding the bar. They should be following the law. These are the people teaching our children what is right, what is wrong. I mean, we have to be asking ourselves, is it too hard to follow campaign laws? It didn't take me long to just go through this. As soon as I knew they were on air, I was like, hey, we got a problem here, you know. And I'm just keeping to myself. I'm talking to a few people. But ultimately, you know, something in the back of my head was clicking like, this is something I need to be looking at. So part of, there's been a huge reaction, as Ken could say. He published the article, sure, and there's been thousands of views. We went to the school board meeting last night, and people were...
We didn't get to it, yeah.
Yeah, people were, they were talking about it.
We learned something really interesting. Oh, my microphone's off. We learned something really interesting last night, and that is that this type of behavior is continuing. So there were people who risked their jobs. I'll let Charlie talk a little bit about it. There were two people who came in, and spoke and risked their jobs.
Yeah, one, I won't give her name, but she was in transportation. She was remarking about how racism was going on in the workplace, how it was being covered up, and she basically went full force at the board saying, we have a problem, this needs to be addressed, and this needs to be stopped now. And then there was another woman, a teacher at Moore, and I will omit her name, but she also came forward, risking her job, saying there is a mold problem at Morton High School.
Oh my gosh!
And there was a
big health issue.
Conditions with the air filtration system and like the temperature of the controls and whatnot. And I could speak to my own experiences as a father. I had a son that was at Hess Elementary, and all year last year I complained of mold that was going on. I believe that was in his classroom. The conditions of how it was being cleaned. I ended up just going above everybody and filing a health complaint with DCS. And ultimately it got solved in certain aspects. But even as a father in that classroom, I can also speak on behalf of being the chairman for the Hammond Republican Party. So I have fine poll workers, and coincidentally at Hess Elementary, my son's classroom was used for the polling location for the referendum. And I had poll workers tell me, there is a problem in this room. There are bugs all over this room. What is going on? This is November, and there's bugs all in the room. And Hess is the most new renovated school that's out there.
Wow.
I think it's only 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do we hold accountable for this? These schools are all been pretty much renovated except all the high schools and middle schools. Who do we hold accountable? Maintenance? Are people just going in for a job and, that's it? I'm doing my 40 hours a week? Or do they really care what's going on? Or is this just being covered up? Oh, we'll fix it when it comes time to, budget review and all this.
That's a good question, Charlie. I would wonder, I guess, what cost there is in mold extraction or mold maintenance.
Yep.
Before we get to that, I want to talk about the other thing, though, that relates back to this, that the transportation worker talked about, and that is that Pat O'Rourke, the leader of the teachers union, according to this woman, came to her job location and went to other job locations with these petitions seeking signatures for the school board nomination. That's a violation of law. That's a violation of campaign finance law.
Isn't that what Van Til went to jail for himself?
Kind of similar. Now, this
similar.
is Pat O'Rourke,
Yeah, right.
who was caught, by the way, and ordered to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars because he was being illegally paid. We don't know if he ever paid it back. I highly doubt that he paid back 1 red cent. Nobody's ever shown any book showing that he paid back the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he was illegally paid. The State Board of Accounts told them that he was not working for the school corporation and he was getting paid $73,000 a year. This is the guy, surprisingly, when you get $73,000 a year for doing nothing, you're very loyal to the school board. He's supposed to be the union president. That would be like the
Over
union
here.
president,
Over here.
ArcelorMittal, going around, handing out stuff for the owner of ArcelorMittal.
Which I happen to be an employee of. But coincidentally. But the school board reaction, he mentioned the school board. I did have one member of the school board, I will admit their name, who came up to me and addressed the concerns that I had brought forward, and at least we had an honest discussion about it. They seemed generally concerned as to what I was presenting, and they would do due diligence and look into it. Now, you guys were just talking about precinct committeemen. There's one person on the board that happens to be a precinct committeeman for my organization, the Hammond Republican Party. If that person showed up to the meetings, they would see what we were planning or what we were compiling all along. So this school board member is a precinct committeeman, doesn't show up to the meetings. So, this is somewhat, you would know what's going on if you showed up,
You could have known this long ago.
Yes,
Last November, since they
exactly.
were talking about getting, bug spray out.
So ignorance is bliss in a sense. On that
That's
front.
unfortunate. That's unfortunate.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I've talked to many School City Hammond employees of wrongdoings that are going on, no oversight in safety and work projects, shortage of personnel to save employee benefit costs. Like we said, we were talking about last night's school board meeting and all that.
Transparency. Is
Yes,
also an issue.
transparency is all I'm asking for, and accountability. That's what it comes down to. So, my first point is I like to stress is there's a problem going on. It's time to say something. If you are aware of what's going on in any wrongdoing, you should contact me. You should contact Ken. We'll point you in the right direction as to what you can do, especially under the Whistleblower Act, if there are serious violations like I suspect there are. I was able to uncover all this while running for office, while working a full-time job at the steel mill, while being the chairman of the Hammond Republican Party,
And
while
family,
while caring to my wife, caring to my 2 young children who are 4, and I'll have my youngest will be 1 next month.
Congrats.
Thank you. So, and then the second thing, the referendum, you need to ask yourself, what's the intended purpose for all this? My family had Done Right Dry Cleaners for 10 years, family-owned
amazing.
business, yes,
Didn't know that.
in Hammond. We had 3 locations.
I've seen it.
But the biggest thing was ensuring that our customers were satisfied. So how did we do that? We made sure that their items that they brought in for attention were handled with best care and attention, as if it was their most treasured item, okay? Whether it was or wasn't, but that's how we treated
Thought
it.
of it that way. Sure.
Do you think our school corporation, which is like a business, is following that same standard?
For children.
Yeah, exactly. Are our children getting the best education in a manner that's positive? Are your children's needs being met? Are your children in a safe environment in the schools? and I'm not saying necessarily like a threat safety-wise. I'm saying from mold. Are the buildings being cared for, maintained properly, cleaned properly? Case in point, I'm going to rely back on my experience as a father. I would go into my son's Head Start room. Garbage would be there on a Friday, and it didn't get moved until that Monday. It sat in the classroom all weekend. You know, that's just personal experience that I've seen and had to deal with talking with the teachers about. You know, our children, you know, they're precious, and we're failing them. You know, and is this trend going to continue? Because what I've presented, there's consequences, and there are violations. The violations to these consequences are Class A misdemeanors. You know, these are very serious, and they shouldn't be ignored. You know, and who do we blame? Who ultimately do we blame? Do we blame the school board? Do we blame Dr. Watkins, other administrators? Do we blame the lawyers that are advising these people? I mean, there's problems if lawyers are saying, looking at this, oh, okay, and then someone like me, virtually a nobody, you know, comes along saying, hey, you guys did this wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but it's common sense.
You can read.
I could read the statutes.
See.
Exactly. So should maybe these contracts with these law firms be terminated, or other measures taken against these law firms if they're doing a piss poor job?
It's amazing. Ken's been wrestling, I know, in regards to getting information on the 110 million.
Right.
As far as just when, I think, again, contracts were made, and the consent agenda stuff that has my head spinning. With you, Charlie.
Well, think about it. 110 is what they're asking for, but we all know there's overrun costs that happen, and you can almost guarantee in business there's expect 15% overrun costs. So we're going to probably talk somewhere around the ballpark of 145, 150 million when it's all said and done, and that's just being conservative.
Right.
Well, even last night at the meeting, I mean, there's asking for different changes and all these things. All those things cost money. Right. I mean, they were talking about, they had a presentation, and instead of a gym, they're doing this thing called the black box. And so this.
What is that?
Basically, it's a room that can be changed to an auditorium, to a gym, to different functions. Right.
So like the hockey basketball courts that we're talking about at Boston Garden.
It was a weird design. Like I said, this is going to be my 10-year class reunion is coming up
awesome.
Next month, or 2 months from now, actually. So I graduated Gavitt class of 2008, and what they were presenting just wasn't making sense. The design layout for it, it didn't seem like it would float in my mind. Now, they talked about some of the Project Lead the Way courses, which I took at Gavitt. I took their civil engineering course, and I've had a brief understanding of it. Why are you going to have a football field literally within feet of the building? I mean, we're not saying it's going to be 10 feet or 15 feet. From the projections, it looked like it was literally. Okay, you have it the building, and the football field is right adjacent.
You're out
to
of bounds, and you lose your face because you ran into a brick wall.
Well, I don't know. The bleachers would be adjacent to it, but
I see what you're saying.
Regardless, I mean, there's no spacing. It doesn't seem like it's proper. Or it doesn't seem like it flows right.
Well, Mary Ellen was on, and she talked about the fact that they're cramming this onto a 15-acre site, which the state generally doesn't allow.
Okay.
Yeah, there seems to be problems with the design of it, and at least in my mind, from my experiences.
And where can folks get a chance to look at this, Charlie? If they want to see these plans that you're talking about, or can? Do you guys know?
Well, I'll put them out on the Gazette. They do have them online. There's a blog for the building construction. But where can people know more about you?
Right. Yeah. Well, about me, if you want to know more about me, I have a website, ckallasrun.com.
Is that the best?
That's great. The letter C, my last name, Kallas, Kallas, run, RUN.com. I've lived in Hammond all my life. So born and raised, like I said, my family had Dunright Dry Cleaners for 10 years. I was co-vice president with my twin brother, William, on that.
Nice.
After high school, I joined the Army. I got it. Basically, I just decided I'm going to do this. Not so much reasoning why, but I did track, cross country, so basketball. I was like, yeah, I can do this. So I joined the Army.
Could you do it? Was it tough still, though?
It was great. I had some good times, some bad times, but ultimately it was a good experience. I deployed once to Afghanistan, 2010, 2011.
Well, thank you for that, sir.
You're welcome. During the surge, that was a very interesting time overseas. You learn a lot about who you are. being
Right.
separated from your friends, your family. I mean, you got friends within your unit, but ultimately you have to deal with an isolation. And it was there I really became who I am today.
Interesting.
Selfless service, going on in that path. Then that's why I'm sort of here today, is because of selfless service that I learned in the Army.
Right. We need more of that in this realm of that you're trying to enter. Seriously.
Well, we need more of it. Well, aside from me, but my generation in general. My
Sure.
generation is going to have to step up. At some point, your generation, they're going to get up in age, and who's going to lead it from there? I mean, your generation is taking that charge, but ultimately, it's going to be up to us in the next decade or so.
Well, that's awesome, because I think what I hear from you is not the phrase that I always hear from the people that are my age or older. That's the way we've always done it. Nobody wants to, I'm telling you, people do not want to hear that phrase anymore. They do not want to hear the phrase. How are we doing with it? We're every school corporation is $100 million in debt. That I pretty close to it. Everywhere you point, in every direction of where we're sitting.
As the state legislature positions go, they typically deal with the budgeting on which school corporations get what money, in a sense, and that's typically how far it goes. So this goes back to why I'm doing this. So yes, I see how much the school city of Hammond's getting. I'm seeing how much the Munster school corporation's getting, Lake Central. All of those are in my district that I would have to oversee in a sense. And I can see referendum after referendum after referendum, and the people are just saying to me, like, what's going on with these referendums? We have these 1% tax caps, but you're adding more money into it. Well, maybe the state law can change to, you have the 1% tax cap, and if you want a referendum for what you're asking, that comes out of the 1%. So then you have to cut something else. That way the taxpayers aren't burdening all the expenses that are going on. I mean, and you guys were just talking about the possible food and beverage tax and increase in income county taxes. That could go up, another 1%?
Not 1 cent of the Lake County option income tax goes to the schools.
Right.
And the zero TIF based stuff that takes again, which I always said is it's inborn to do it this way, so that you're never asking money for roads or a new thing. You can always say, it's the schools, guys. Everything gets pushed on the schools. Yet we keep hearing millions, is it hundreds of millions of dollars, Ken, just to get compliant compliant, right? Have we heard this?
$407 million
just to get compliant.
Just for Hammond, to make their schools, the term was suitable for educational purposes.
Which is all I just outlined in my monologue. With all the problems that were going on. Yep.
That's amazing. Well, where does that come from?
UI, the rest of the taxpayers.
Well, is there going to be another, like you're saying, will there be another referendum? I mean, you can't, maybe you can send the kids to school with mold and a basketball court that's, that's slippery or has water condensation because of whatever reason.
Right.
The basketball court at Morton has nails sticking out of it. If a kid falls, they'll get a nail in the face.
Nobody's got a ball peen over there?
They come around with the ball peen occasionally, but then they pop back up as you're.
They need a ball peen man.
I'd love to see this. I'd love to see it in person. I'll probably have to go to an event and check it out.
Oh my gosh! So who's above? Go ahead. I mean, who would you say again? Who should we blame? Those people aren't the people obviously we can go to.
Well,
is it going to be you one day?
Who do we blame? I'm not going to personally call anybody out as to who we should blame, but we obviously have a variety of problems that need to be addressed from a variety of different angles. I've done my due diligence and my homework on this. I've submitted to the Board of Elections. The ball is in their court. So it is going to be up to them as to how they want to decide that. I hope that it would be unanimous, not a 3-2 decision against simply because I'm a Republican and the Democrats lead that board. I would think that there's enough compelling evidence that I submitted to at least submit it to the State Board of Accounts. I mean, that's how serious of violations there are going on.
Ken, let me ask you that. How do you feel that the State Board of Accounts works with this area? I mean, they seem to be sort of waffling on the EMS funds from Geary.
I think.
Do you think they give us enough of their eyeballs?
Charlie's not
their
going to like
brains?
my answer.
Okay.
I think they used to be better. I think under the Holcomb administration, some things have changed. I think they're understaffed. I think there are some good people there. They're doing audits once every 2 or 3 years now. By statute, they're supposed to do them every year. If they do a special audit, it'll take a year and a half to get the results.
Okay.
They're understaffed.
Let me ask you this. what's it better, going to the State Board of Accounts or the county prosecutor?
Wow, yeah, probably that first team.
I mean, seriously,
Well,
if you think about it, what's being done at that level?
I think the last time I heard somebody go into the county prosecutor was in the Mike Mokel investigation, and they may still be looking at that. And I think that was in 1988. So 3 years might be a blessing. Wow. The feds take about 3 years too, by the way.
Well, from my understanding, if you go to State Board of Accounts and if they find serious allegations, they turn it over to the feds for the most part to continue that. That's my understanding.
I said this frequently. About half the federal investigations into corruption in Lake County came from the State Board of Accounts.
Is that another avenue, like you're saying, Charlie? As far as what I'm saying is these folks that you say, if you see something, say something, to maybe go straight to the feds.
At this point, you take it to the proper channels. You don't want to overstep. You want people to do their due diligence and what they're in that position for. But ultimately, you have different avenues of approach. So if the Board of Elections doesn't want to hear my complaint, or they don't think there's enough evidence there, maybe I'll submit it to the State Board of Accounts. If they don't think so, I'll go to the Attorney General. If they don't think so, I'll go higher, till I think, okay, I've gone as high as I can go, and this is it. And I hope I'm not the only one.
That's what I'm saying.
From what I gather, I am not the only one. People have come forward to me after that article and said, there's this wrong, there's this wrong, there's this wrong. I was like, then you need to be doing something. I can't be the only one.
Right.
I'm running for office, and I felt the need to come on air and, use that position in a sense to get some attention to this. And I'm hoping someone else takes up that torch and continues the fight, because, I can't be the only one that does this.
Absolutely.
So, but what do we do now? Does this election get nullified? Does it get passed on? Do we get our tax dollars back? What happens now? Would you have any aspect as to how they would proceed with this? Or
I would like to see. Look, it's all worth it if our school grades improve.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. As long as the money they have the money now, as long as the money is spent wisely, that's great. And until they demolish Hammond High School, we can still fix the other buildings.
Right.
There's nothing under law. Look, they just wasted $6 million in no bid contracts that they don't even want to tell us how they gave them.
That was your your article you sent yesterday's article.
And there was more about.
Check it out on Northwest Indiana Gazette. We didn't get to it yet.
And so, what the only thing we can do now, in my opinion, is force a change so that the schools, the mold in the schools gets fixed. The security issues in the schools,
major health risk, mold, major
all
health
those issues. And then, you know what? If we need a new high school down the road, first of all, we have to talk about closing a high school. We have to get real about that. We have to close and consolidate, and then talk about building a new high school.
Well,
that's my opinion.
We're short on time. I know we got about 3 minutes left.
3 minutes.
Okay, so I just want to say this. Since the article, since my complaint, since I issued that statement, there's been political retaliations gone full swing already against Republicans. People are reacting to it. I want to make sure this is not in a partisan manner. I want to make sure this is bipartisan all the way. It shouldn't just be Republicans issuing this. I want Democrats to be involved with my complaint and hear what we're trying to say. Like, this is, the school board is nonpartisan. This issue should be nonpartisan. I'm trying to do the right thing as a candidate, as a father, to two young children that are going to be in the school system. I sort of want to ask, I don't want to target my opponent, but he's been in for 40 years. I've done this and I'm not even elected yet. What he's put a stance on education, but what's he really done? I'm trying to raise the bar to a higher standard for elected officials, and I hope that people can see that I'm trying to do the right thing here.
Right on.
So.
We got a chance for a quick call, 845-1100 if you want to ask Charlie Kallas a call. Again, it's C
Kallas Run.
C Kallas Run.
The letter C, which is the initial of my first name, Kallas, Kallas, run.com. I also have a Facebook page, which is Kallas for Indiana Senate. And then we also have Twitter, Instagram, which you can follow as well.
Tell us about some of the other issues you're passionate about.
Real quick, sure.
What do you mean exactly? Like
in your campaign?
Well, taxation's the big one. I mean, we want to pay less taxes, so obviously target that issue is the caps and everything. Education, like I'm doing big on that. Another thing was people are talking about homeownership and back to education simply because we overpaid out of the reserve budget, and people are targeting, oh, we're not putting enough in the education, not enough in the education. Well, we had people influx. I mean, home ownership has been increasing in Indiana. That's why, because people are coming in Indiana. They have lower cost of living. They're bringing their children. These kids are going to schools. Well, of course, the schools don't have enough money to compensate for all these new influx that are coming in. So Indiana is on the right track. We just need to continue by electing new people and not always incumbents.
Right. Good ideas.
So I believe that's our time.
Right on. Hey, great to have you.
One quick note, this show was paid for by me, not my committee, not the Hammond Republican Party. I paid out of pocket with this show.
Great to have you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Again, check him out, his website, Facebook page. You heard it all here. You can check it out on Facebook Live. You'll have that for posterity. It'll be on our page, as well as the WJOB page and your page. So
thank you very much.
We'll be right back to 12:30.